All right. Testing. 1, 2, 3. I'm a bit rusty at this one, so we'll see how it goes. What's up, everybody? My name is Jordan, and welcome to the Only Cappy podcast, the only place where you will be able to hear my voice, aside from, calling me on the phone or whatever, but who picks up the phone nowadays, honestly? This one was this one was long overdue, as well as every other podcast that I'll be doing. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I'm like, I know what I want to do. It's just a matter of executing it. And with everything going on, I'm like, it's going to take some time, but eventually we'll get there. And today's just a little test run, but we'll see what happens. Typically, I like to open these with a quote, which honestly, being in the Army, I'm just going to do something Army related because, that's what I do. So this one's from the Soldier's Creed, which is one that they've had us sing literally every day before lunch, before breakfast chow, before dinner. This was like basic training 101 right here. And I'm just going to give you a little snippet of it because the whole thing is probably like a minute long. So it goes, I'm an American soldier. I'm a warrior and a member of a team. I serve the people of the United States and live the Army values. I will always place the mission first. I'll never accept defeat. I'll never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade. And that literal paragraph got us through every single day basic training. So basically what this podcast is going to be about, we're going to get guests on here and we're going to talk about who they are as a person, what they do, where they come from, and then something they're passionate about. Being that this is my podcast, I'm going to talk about me for a minute. I'm going to talk about Army basic training, and then we're going to go into something I'm passionate about. So like I said, this one's long overdue. It might be a little long, it might be a little short. Who knows? We'll see where it goes. So around, I want to say 2000, we're in 2024 right now. I want to say 2022, my grandpa had passed away. And it was a rough time for me, man. It was a rough time for everyone. I spent a year after his passing just trying to live life, trying to get by, trying to do what I got to do. And after he passed, I went back to New York, where I'm originally from, moved him in my best friend's basement, and I was just working retail for an entire year, man. I was living off eggs from chickens and ramen. And I was just trying to find my place, trying to find where I belong. So after that, it got to a point where I was like, okay, I need to do something. I need to do something big. And right when I'm thinking all these thoughts, my best friend was like, yo, man, we're selling the house, or we're getting a new house. And he's like, do you got something figured out? And I'm like, no, but I'm going to have to figure something out. So I did what I wanted to do since I was 18. And I joined the Army. And the reason it was so delayed is because at 18 years old, they were like, oh, yeah, you're too skinny, or you don't have this, or you don't have that, or, certain medical waivers need to be cleared in order for you to join. And for me, I'm like, okay, well, medically, I know in my head I'm not going to be cleared because of all my issues as a child. But then I was like, you know what? I said, let me go through this medical waiver process. We'll see what happens. We'll see if I get approved, and we'll go from there. Originally, I was going to be a cook because I'm like, I want to choose the safest option. I want to choose an option that's not infantry or like on the front lines. Because I just picture like Forrest Gump running through the battlefield, yelling about Bubba, yelling about Lieutenant Dan. And I'm like, I can't do that, man. I don't want to do that, right? So I choose cook, and we go throughout the process. And of course, medical waivers need to be signed and all that. So it took a little longer than I anticipated. I think it was like a 2-month process. And then when we got to the finish line, they were like, yo, so cook isn't available. I'm like, okay. I'm like, what is available? And they gave me all these options. They're like, you could be infantry, you could be artillery, you could be a cryptic linguist. And I thought cryptic linguist was pretty cool, learn a different language, go study a different language. But then I thought about it, I'm like, yo, my brain can't process all that. I'm like, I barely passed Spanish class and I'm Puerto Rican. Like, how does that even happen? Right? So I told him, I'm like, listen, I'm not very smart. And then I thought about Forrest Gump again, where he was like, is he stupid like me, Johnny? Is he smart? Right. So I'm like, okay, what are my options that are basic, but also offer a decent amount of a bonus? And they're like, well, they said 19 kilo, aka a tanker. You could do that. And I'm like, okay, how much is the bonus? They're like, 25,000 for 4 years. Sign me up. I said, sign me up. Right. Little did I know, our good friend Uncle Sam likes to take taxes, right? So that equated to like maybe 4,000 out of each increment of the bonus. Whatever. Cool. Signed the contract. Now we're there for 4 years and 22 weeks. I'm like, okay, where am I going for basic training? They're like, oh, well, you see here, you got one station unit training and you're going to 4 more. So one station unit training is basically you do like, I think it was like 12 weeks in basic and then another 10 weeks in AIT, which was job-based training, right? So 22 weeks in total. I know I got that math screwed up, but 22 weeks in total, basically. Right. So I did that. And I still remember like the first day where I packed up all my stuff and I'm with my mom and I'm thinking about everything that I'm going to be doing. I'm thinking about everything I'm going through. And there was that like final goodbye, like, okay, mom, I'm doing this. And I left, got on the bus, and we took off. And I'll tell you, man, that was a long bus ride. That was a really long bus ride. It felt like forever getting from the hotel in Jersey that they had us staying in to the MEP Center in New York. And then from the MEP Center, they made us take our vow and take our oath. And then they were just like, okay, you're going. Bye. And I was like, oh, that quick, huh? And they're like, yeah, you're gone. So I was like, all right, cool. Right. And they told us straight up, they're like, yo, get plenty of sleep because when you get there, you're going straight to it. You're going to go straight to work. And I'm like, all right, bet. Right. So we land in basic training, which was in Georgia. But before you go to the actual basic training, you had to go what was called to reception. And reception was, I want to say like a week and a half for us. We got off the bus and I didn't expect like anything that happened there. It wasn't screaming, it wasn't yelling. It was, yo, get off the bus. You got to do X, Y, and Z. You got to pack this, pack that, do this, do that. A lot of paperwork. It was a very rough time, man. It was a very rough time. I wasn't used to any of it. I think the highlight from my basic training, right? Aside from not being able to sleep for 24 hours when we got to reception, because we didn't sleep for like a day and a half, I believe. My highlight was when we were going to fill up our Camelbacks, which is our water source, right? I turned the hose for the water source and water's going everywhere and it's spraying like crazy. And they're like, turn it off, turn it off. So I grabbed the hose because I didn't want anything shooting out like crazy. I go to fold it and instead of it going to fold, it shoots up in the air. I try to control it. I grab the hose and I end up spraying one of the sergeants in the face. And I was like, damn. And that guy was so mad, man. And it was one of the angrier sergeants who's already been demoted for, I think he was cursing out at someone or like bullying someone. So he already got demoted one time, right? So he looks at me, he walks up to me, he goes, you know what, trainee? You did that on purpose. He's like, if it happens again, I'm busting your goddamn kneecaps. And I look at him, I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Sergeant. And he's like, God damn it, trainee. Don't tell me you're sorry because then I'm going to feel bad. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And everyone was just looking around like, oh crap. Like that kid's about to get beat up, right? So that was the highlight of my reception. Aside from calling a sergeant, drill sergeant, every 2 seconds, because I had that training in me from Forrest Gump where it was like, just say yes, drill sergeant, to everything. So I was like, yes, drill sergeant. And he's like, I'm not a fucking drill sergeant. I'm like, oh, my bad, dog. I was like, that's my bad. Right. So after that, that was the first day, right? We're getting ready to sleep. It's like 1 a.m. or something like that. So 2 hours goes by and I'm sleeping and I'm regretting like every life decision I've ever made. And just my luck, around like 3 a.m., we get the sergeant coming in with a not blowhorn. What is that? Like a big megaphone, right? He comes in with the megaphone. He's like, "Get up, get up, get up!" He starts screaming and yelling and throwing stuff. And I'm like, "What is going on right now?" Right? So it's Georgia. If you're from Georgia, or you're from Florida, or anywhere like that, it's gonna be raining, right? So we go out. It's pouring in the rain. They're like, "You got 2 minutes to get out of your bed to get out of here." So pouring rain, thundering, crazy, and we're under an awning, so we're not getting wet, right? We're not getting wet. But just the setting itself of the thunder and the rain and everything going crazy, we're like, what is going on? What did I get myself into? So we're dealing with that. We come to find out that someone missed his shift for fire guard, which is basically like watching over everyone. So someone missed their shift for that. So because of that, we had to do corrective action, right? Corrective action was like 10 sit-ups or 10 push-ups or something like that, like basic stuff. But because we're new and because we're not ready for it, we were exhausted. And everyone was questioning themselves and everyone was questioning life. They're like, why am I here? What am I doing? Where's my family? Stuff like that. That for me was the most interesting part of reception, aside from getting my long, beautiful hair cut off, while the sergeant just sat there in joy. He looked at me and he goes, I like your hair. I can't wait to sit in that chair right there and watch them chop every single bit of it off. And sure enough, when it was my time to get that hair chopped off, he walks in, he goes, I'm going to enjoy this. And he sits down and he starts laughing at me right in my face. So that was reception. Nothing terrible, nothing crazy. We had one guy that decided he wanted to be too much Army. His name was, I'm not going to embarrass him like that because he's not even in the Army anymore. But anyway, he decided he wanted to be too Army and he starts yelling at people to wake up. And he's like, wake up, Semper Fi, Marines, do or die, hoo-ah, like stuff like that, like way too much. Like, dude played way too much Call of Duty, right? So the sergeants called him out on it. They're like, oh, you want to be an asshole, huh? He's like, you're going to sit here in formation and go up to every single private and you're going to say, I'm sorry, my name is Private Asshole. Sure enough, every single person, I'm sorry, my name is Private Asshole. To every single person in formation. Right? Moving on from that, we had what was called D-Day, or the first day of our actual basic training and graduation from reception. And I'm thinking, man, you know what? It can't be any worse than what we just dealt with. Boy, was I wrong. We got on that bus, man, and they said, you're going to put your heads down into you're going to put your heads down into your laps and you're going to just sit here. You don't get to look at the surroundings. You don't get to look at where you're going. You're just going to sit here until we tell you to get off the bus. Because I'm thinking of everything that I left behind, and I'm thinking of my family, and I'm thinking of my friends. I shed a tear for a second. And the person who was next to me, I guess he saw that I was upset because he started to like pat me on the back. He's like, it's going to be okay, man. You're going to be all right. I'm like, I'm 28 years old and I don't know why I'm doing this. I didn't say that out loud, obviously, but it's in my head. I was like, damn, dude. So we get there to Fort Moore. We arrive. And they start telling us, get off the bus, get off the bus. So now I'm looking at everything I've seen on YouTube where they're screaming at you, they're yelling at you, they're intimidating you. And everyone's going crazy. They're all scrambling and they're like, oh my God, this is the worst day of my life, right? So the first thing we did It was called the Thunder Run. The Thunder Run's like you jog to every single checkpoint, you do a corrective exercise, and you learn more history about tankers and what you're going to be doing and who did what, and you just learn history in general. So my dumbass, right, being the idiot that I am, I get off the bus and they're like, start jogging, right? So I'm jogging, and I'm like, I'm ahead of everyone. I'm doing so good. I'm even ahead of the flag bearer, right? You're supposed to run behind the guidon, first of all. It's called the guidon. You're supposed to run behind it. My dumbass thought I was just supposed to run. And I'm thinking like a 50-meter dash. I'm like, I got this. I'm so good, right? Dude, I was out of breath by the time we got to the first checkpoint. And they're like, okay, let's keep going. I'm like, huh? I said, can't we just stop here? So we keep going and we hit the second checkpoint and we're supposed to carry like a stretcher with like a doll on it. So, and it was like some ammo attached to it, stuff like that. And unfortunately for me, I was one of the soldiers that grabbed that stretcher. And they told us too, they're like, yo, if you're feeling like you can't, if you're feeling like you got to switch with someone who doesn't have the stretcher, right? So we get about a quarter of the way through and I'm like, yo, I need to swap out with someone, because we're running and we got this stretcher. I said, swap, swap, swap. No one wanted to grab that stretcher, right? So I end up falling. I tripped on some rocks and I busted my face into it was the concrete at the time, right? I look at my hand. There's a big gash in my hand, basically sliced up. Stitches, but I kept going. I had blood all over my hand. And one of the drill sergeants came up to me. He's like, oh, you're falling. I see you. You need special attention. Don't worry, Private. I'm going to give you that special attention. So already I'm making a name for myself. And I think a Gambit in Deadpool was like, ooh, I'm about to make a name for myself. Right? So we get to the checkpoints. We do all the exercises. Hoo-ha, woo-ha, whatever you want to call it. It's a good day. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, it can't get worse. I think about that Timmy Turner episode from Fairly Odd Parents where he's like, what could possibly go wrong? Just wait. Just wait. So we're in formation. One of our drill sergeants is teaching us how to tie our bootlaces properly so that way they don't get in the way. And that way, you can look clean and professional and, get your combat boots off at a good, decent time. I didn't hear a word this woman said because I am deaf as hell, right? So I was just like, all right, whatever. I'm like, I could just tuck my laces in and we'll be good. So she comes up to me and she goes, what the fuck is you doing, you? And I'm like, what do you mean, drill sergeant? And she goes, motherfucker, I just taught every single person here where to put their bootlaces, how to tie their bootlaces, and your shit is looking all janky. And I was like, oh, my bad, drill sergeant. And she said, you're bad. You're bad, motherfucker. Yeah, you are bad. And she looks at me and I said, sorry, ma'am. The worst possible thing you could say to any drill sergeant, any sergeant, anyone in general. Because ma'am is a distinction for officers. She is not an officer. So she looks at me and she goes, oh, I'm a ma'am? No, I'm not a ma'am. I work for a living, motherfucker. Right? So already I'm biting my tongue because I'm like, damn, I screwed up. And she looks at me and she looks at the entire formation and she goes, okay. She's like, stand here. She's like, since Private motherfucking Rivera wants to call me a ma'am and thinks I don't work for a living, she's like, we're going to do some corrective action. Mind you, this is the first day. I don't have a good history with first days, honestly. When I got here to my unit of choice, right, I dropped a big tow bar right on the toe of my sergeant. So first days, good impressions, they don't really go well with me. So as they're doing the corrective action, she's like, okay, when I say down, you're going to say thank you. When I say up, you're going to say Private Rivera. Oh, man, what a first day, bro. I know everyone was cussing me out. I know everyone hated me. I know not a single person in there wanted to deal with me, right? So I'm like, it could only get better from here because it's already at its lowest point. And we're in the bay, right? We're in the bay. We're doing whatever. And one of our senior drill sergeants, he goes, "Hey, you, and you." And he points to me. He's like, "Come out here. I need some help with something real quick." So we all rush out. We're going to help him. And I'm sitting there and picking up equipment. And he goes, my senior drill sergeant comes up to me and he says, "Hey, blah, 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 blah. What are you doing with this?" And I'm like, "Hang on." I said, "Wait a minute, bro." Thinking that it was one of the privates. So he looks up. I look up at him. He looks at me. And he goes, "Oh, bro? We're bro now? We're bros? We're bros? We're homies?" And I was like, "God damn it, dude." And he's like, "You got about a minute to get from this pole to that pole." And he points out the poles and he's like, "You better start running." Right? So I ran to the one pole. I ran back to the other pole. And he starts screaming at me. He's like, "You better beat me in a race. You better beat me in a race. If you don't beat me in a race, I'm going to smoke you. I'm going to blah, blah, blah." Bro, I ran so fast. I felt like Forrest Gump. I was like, "I love you, Jenny." So that was literally day one. And it didn't get better from there because the first 72 hours are meant to test like your mental durability, your strength, how you're feeling, how you're going to be in the army. And let me tell you something, man. A lot of people on day 1, 2, and 3, they folded. I seen people crying. I seen people like passed out. I seen people in the corner like hurtled over themselves, begging to be with their mommy and daddy. And then there was me. It didn't register in my head. I was just like, okay, well, this is what it is. I'm just like, it's fine. You know that one meme where the dog's sitting in the room and the room is burning and he's like, "This is fine." Yeah, I'm like, that was me. Um, but I went into basic training knowing I was small, knowing I wasn't the strongest, knowing that I had a lot of room to improve. So every day I would wake up. If we weren't doing anything, I was doing push-ups, I was doing sit-ups, I was doing everything I can do. And that's where my very first like issue occurred that would shift the entirety of my basic training. I'm doing push-ups one day, right? Doing push-ups in the bay. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. I'm getting used to it. And two dudes were roughhousing in the bay. And all of a sudden, one of them gets thrown onto me. And I felt like it was like a little crack in my hip. And I was just like, "Oh, that's weird." Like it hurt for a second, but I was like, "Okay, that's weird." Didn't think too much of it. I was just like, "All right, whatever." And then, dude, let me tell you, the next day we did a run. It was like a company run. And I could feel like my left leg, it wasn't feeling right. And the best way I could describe it to the doctors and to everyone else, I was like, it felt like I was in fourth gear or third gear. And I couldn't shift to that final gear. Like I couldn't get my leg going. So I said, "All right, let me take this pain from my left side and shift it to my right." So I started using my right side more. And I guess I put too much weight on my right side compared to my left. And then one day we're running and it just popped. And my left gave out. And then my right gave out. And I was like, "What the hell, dude? What is going on?" I couldn't do any more physical exercise. I couldn't walk. I couldn't run. And I was like, "This is an extremely weird feeling. I don't know how this happened. I don't know what's going on." And my first sergeant, he seen me when I was trying to take a lap. They told us to take a lap one day, and I was struggling to get that lap in. And mind you, at the time before the injury, I was the fastest, like one of the fastest runners in the platoon. All of a sudden, I can't run. So he asked me, he's like, "What's wrong? You look like you're in pain. You look like you're suffering." And I told him, I said, "Man," I said, "I can't walk. I can't run. I can't do anything right now." So he tells me, "Go to sick call, go handle that, see what's up. Maybe it's just a little, boo boo, ba ba ba." I go to sick call, I come back, and they told me, they're like, "Yo, you gotta go get an MRI, you gotta get an X-ray." So I go and I do that. I come back, and the results of the X-ray and the MRI, they told me, they're like, "Okay, so this jelly that we put on you," and it was like a little petroleum jelly that they put on, you know, your legs, and it shows like where the injuries are, where the potential injuries are. He's like, "Whatever injuries you have, big or small, it's going to be dark gray, medium gray, black, or dark black," right? So he shows me the chart, and it was dark black on my hips, black on my thighs, black on my leg, black on my shins, on both sides of my body. So he basically told me, he said, yo, listen, you have 4 injuries in this leg, 4 injuries in that leg, and then a hip injury. And that was when I was like, damn, dude, am I done? Like, is this over? And they gave me an option. They're like, listen, you could get medically discharged, or if you decide you want to keep moving forward, you could keep moving forward. So me being the stubborn person that I am, I'm like, I got to see this through. I want to see this through. I was like, yo, I said, let's roll the dice. I'm going to do rehab and I'm going to keep moving forward, right? Now that meant missing most of my training. That meant missing the important stuff that I needed to do in order to graduate. Now, normally, if you only have 10 weeks of basic training and you don't have AIT in the same spot, they're going to leave you behind. You get left back. But because we had the 22 weeks of training, they told me, they're like, listen, they're like, you're going to do your 22 weeks of training, and whatever you got to make up from basic training that you missed, you're going to do it while you're in AIT. I'm like, okay, cool. So that's the road that I went on. I missed out on all the marches. I missed out on all the runs. I missed out on all the obstacle courses and everything like that while I was injured. And even when I tried to do them while I was injured, they told me, they're like, get off the course. You can't do it. You're injured. I literally did, it was called a confidence course. I literally did a confidence course with all of my injured body parts. And at the end of it, they were like, we're not going to count this because you're injured. And I was like, oh, that sucks, right? So my day-to-day basic training experience after I got injured was wake up 5 a.m., go to sick call, rehab. Rehab was like from 7:30 to like 8:30. And then just go and watch everyone do their activities that they had to do for the day and sit on the sidelines and watch. So I was able to make up a couple of things in basic training, but not a lot. And graduation came along for basic training. And they pulled us all aside, the people who didn't make stuff up. And they were like, yo, listen, they're like, you can't graduate because you didn't do X, Y, and Z. And every single person that was there was pissed off. Now, a backstory to this, right? So I'm finally getting settled with my injuries. You know, I'm finally able to do a lot more than I was able to do. Like, I'm able to walk now. I'm able to jog. It's like a light jog. I'm able to function. So we had to take what was called the Army Combat Fitness Test, ACFT. You need at least one of these to pass. You need one to pass, and you need one to go into your unit, right? So I'm getting ready to take the ACFT. I'm confident. I'm like, listen, I've been injured, but you know what? I'm getting better. Injuries are getting better. I'm healing up. Literally, the day of the ACFT, I get COVID. Never had COVID in my life. Worked in a hospital during COVID, peak COVID. 2019 to like 2021, 22, I worked in a hospital. Always in the emergency COVID patients, always helping people out that could potentially have COVID, never got it. And all of a sudden that happened. And I was like, God damn, dude, like, give me a break. Let me catch a break. Let me catch something. Right? So they told us, they're like, all right, you guys who have COVID, you go into isolation for 2 weeks. And then, you know, you can just carry on with your training. We go into isolation, right? And then it's like a group of like 6 of us. We're in this little bay. And this little bay that we had, it used to be a sergeant's bay, right? Like a bunch of sergeants would stay there when they were held over. So someone had found a Monopoly board, right? And some games, some board games. So for the 2 weeks that we're there, it was literally just anarchy, Monopoly, and just foolish stuff that you wouldn't expect, which was fun. I will say that was the bright side of my basic training, was getting COVID. But at the same time, I'm like, I want to be out there. I want to graduate. I want to do this. I want to do that. Couldn't do it. So because I had COVID, I also missed out on the 7-mile march that we were supposed to do, which would have also been a graduation requirement. So rewinding, they told us every single person who had COVID wasn't able to graduate basic training yet. We're going to continue our training with the same group. We're not going to get left behind. but we got to make all this stuff up as we go along. Okay, cool. So during one of my shooting ranges, my um, my senior drill sergeant comes up to me. He goes, "Hey, trainee, aren't you supposed to be on crutches?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm supposed to be on crutches, but I'm getting better. I'm doing what I got to do. I'm healing up." And he tells me, he's like, "No, you're not. You're malingering. You're being malingering. You're just lingering around. You don't want to be here. You don't want to graduate. You don't want to get better." He's like, "You don't deserve to be here," basically. And that, for me, that struck a nerve, because I'm like, I'm doing everything I can to rehab. I'm doing everything I can to get better. And I got people who are mad at me, drill sergeants, privates, every single person, telling me, "Oh, you're just taking advantage of the healthcare system. You're trying to get out." I'm like, dude, if I was trying to get out, I would have been out, because they offered me that opportunity. They offered me that opportunity. They asked me how my mental health was. I told them my mental health wasn't good because of everything going on. And they were still like, "No, you don't want to be here." So that always struck a nerve with me, because I was like, I'm trying to get out. I'm trying to do what I got to do. And everyone was like, "Nah, no, you're not. Whatever." Right. So basic training graduation comes along, and that one also struck a nerve, because it was like, how do you tell your family, "Hey, I invited you to this ceremony, but hey, I'm not graduating yet." You know what I mean? So that one hurt. I got to watch all of my people graduate. I got to watch everyone celebrate. I got to watch them, you know, come down and sing one of their cadences as I sat there on the sidelines. Mind you, to add salt into the wounds, they had every single person that wasn't graduate help set up the graduation. They're like, "Yeah, set up the graduation that you're not graduating from." So everyone was moody, everyone was pissed off. But we took that time to reset, go hang out with our families for the weekend and just come back stronger, which we did, which I did. We went into AIT, which was job-based training. Now we get to work on tanks. We get to learn about tanks, and we get to do everything with tanks. And even though I wasn't 100%, healthy yet, it wasn't physical exercise every 2 seconds. It wasn't obstacle courses. It wasn't 10-mile rucks, 10-mile marches. It was literally just learning about the tank. So every day we're learning about the tanks. And now I'm feeling better to the point where I could catch up on my work. So they sent me back to another company to catch up on that work. So every day it would be wake up 6, 7 a.m., go with that other company, do whatever activity they're doing for the day, and then meet up with my company to learn more about tanks. So I was basically doing double duty the whole time, right? And we get to a point where it's like 2 weeks before graduation. And there's a lot I'm skipping over, but there's a whole lot to digest. I would literally be here all day if I went step by step. So it's 2 weeks before graduation. And I have a 4-mile march. It's called Battle March and Shoot. I got the 4-mile Battle March and Shoot. I got the ACFT I got to pass. I got Nick at Night, which is basically what the graduates from basic training did before they graduated. And then I got, I think it was a 10-mile ruck. So it was the 12-mile ruck. So chronologically, I had to do the 12-mile ruck first, which was our AIT graduation requirement. I had to do the Battle March and Shoot, and I had to do the Nick at Night. And this was all like Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then Saturday was the ACFT, which that was the only one we needed because it was the only one that counted for graduation, right? So moving on from that, I did the 12-mile ruck. And I think the happiest thing for me with the 12-mile ruck was it was my first time doing any type of march with my people because of the injury. I think the only one I've ever done before that was the 4-mile march. But being able to do the 12-mile with my people, with my team, with my friends, it was very rewarding and very happy moment for me. And then at the end of the 12-mile march, they had music playing. We had a bonfire. And once we got to the end of that 12-mile and I heard that music playing, I said, "I did it." I was like, "Yo, Adrian, we did it." It was one of those moments where you feel that adrenaline, you feel that excitement, you feel a sense of accomplishment. Because for anyone else in that formation, it's like, yeah, I did 12 miles, whatever, I graduated, we're tankers now. But for me, it was like, I did this with all these injuries, with all these setbacks, with everything going on. And I said, I did it. Right? So we got that done. Mind you, we haven't graduated basic training yet because we didn't catch up on all our work that we had to do. So I became a tanker before I became an army soldier, which is weird because it's not how it's supposed to be, but it's how it was. I was like, all right, cool. So then the 4 mile march and the battle march and shoot is what we had left. Battle march and shoot, which was the 4 mile, and then Nick at Night, which was basically like a stimulation of combat, basically. Like you're just low crawling on the ground, avoiding bullets, avoiding missiles, avoiding everything. So you were just crawling through the sand and getting to the finish line. So that's what that was. But the battle march and shoot was probably, of everything, probably the hardest thing I've done in basic training, because you were running in full gear, right? So you had your weapon, you had your rucksack, you had at least like 40 pounds attached to you, plus your weapon, plus your helmet, and you were running 4 miles to get from point A to point B. Now, mind you, we did this with another company because we were making it up, all the COVID kids, right? Ironically enough, one of the drill sergeants there had actually been our former senior drill sergeant. He had gotten moved to a different company, and now he was just a drill sergeant instead of the senior drill sergeant, right? So he was looking at us, and he's like, oh, you came to make up your work from when you were COVID kids, huh? And we were like, yeah. So he goes, all right, I'm going to pick like 3 of you to be on my team, so that way we can do the battle march and shoot. And he picks this guy, this guy, this guy, whatever. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, whatever. I don't want to be on your team anyway, because you were rude to me during basic training. You didn't want me here. You thought I was malingering, whatever. So then everyone else picks their teams, and there's like 4 of us left. And senior drill sergeant comes up to us. He goes, all right, I need one more. Who's going to step up? I said, screw it. I stepped up, right? So we step up. We get into his line with his people that he has. It's like 12 of them out of like a 40-person platoon. And he's like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to get from point A to point B. We're going to do it fast, and we're going to win, and we're going to win the ribbon, right? And all of us who are making up our work were like, yeah, let's go team, right? So we had our rucksacks, which was like 40 pounds. We look at all of them, and this is a completely different company, mind you. We look at all of them, and they have little assault backpacks, like 20-pound backpacks, right? So we're like, oh, you poor babies. You weren't raised like we were. So we're sitting there, we're doing the ruck, and we're moving. And every single kid that was in that formation, they're like, I can't do it. I'm tired. I want to go home. I don't want to be here. Blah, blah, blah. Like, you have 20 pounds on your back. What are you complaining about, bro? I have a whole 40 pounds on my back, and I'm doing this, man. Right? So all of us from our company were encouraging these kids. We're like, you could do it. You got this. Keep moving forward. Keep pushing forward. And I'm dying, but I'm pushing everyone. And I'm pushing to the front of the line. And I'm like, let's go. Right? We're moving forward. I'm having a good time. It was insane, man. Like, adrenaline kicked in. And by the end of it, I was just like, horrible. Right? But we got to the finish line. And then from there, it's called battle march and shoot. So you battle march, right? You run to the battle. And then what you got to do is corrective action, because you got to be tired, and then you got to shoot. So they made us do like jumping jacks and burpees and like all types of different exercises. There was one exercise, it's called the high jumper, where you got to jump up in the air. You got to come back down. You got to jump in the air. So I'm doing that. And one of my ammo packs fell out of my IOTV. So as I'm jumping, it falls out of my IOTV and busts me right in the tooth, and my tooth came out. And I was like, son of a bitch, bro. Like, let me catch a break, please. Let me catch a break. technically, I guess, because of my teeth breaking, I did catch a break. But it chipped one tooth, broke another, right? And that was like 1 week before graduation. So I'm going into graduation toothless aggression. Like I have no tooth. Right. So we do that. And then we get to the end of everything where, we say goodbye to this company that we made up our work with, whatever. Our former senior drill sergeant comes up to us and he's like, you know what? He's like, you guys did a good job. I respect you. I appreciate you guys pushing my soldiers. I don't think they would have made it if you weren't there to encourage them. I don't think they would have been the same if you guys didn't show the spirit that you did. He's like, I'm glad that we instilled the values that we did on you guys because the values that are being instilled aren't the same ones. And he's like, you know what? You guys did good. And he looked at me at the beginning of this, like when we were in formation getting ready for that 4 mile, he looked at me and he's like, hey, trainee, I remember you. You were the one that waddled like a duck for a couple weeks. So I was like, I'm glad you remember me, man. And I'm glad that I got that self-satisfaction of, hey, man, look, I made it to the end. Hey, man, like, I'm here. I graduated. So that, for me, was, like, the only stamp of approval that I needed. I was like, I proved this guy wrong. I proved everyone wrong, actually, but that's beside the point. So, yeah, we did that. And we did the battle march and shoot later on that night. And after we got done with the battle march and shoot, and we got done with the Nick at night, right? We get into the van and we're leaving these guys behind because now they have to do whatever they have to do. And now we could just go back to base and now we're officially going to graduate. So our drill sergeant just blasted a song in the car. And I'll never forget it because it was the funniest thing. It was someone in Paris. I can't remember who went to Paris, but it was someone in Paris and he just blasted it. And we were all just partying because, man, it felt so good to be officially soldiers now and officially graduate basic training. Now, the only thing left, after doing 10 mile, right? After making up the 10 mile, after making up the 12 mile, not making up the 12 mile, but doing the 12 mile. After doing the 12 mile, after doing the 10 mile, after doing the battle march and shoot, which was another 4 miles added on to that. And this was a span of Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then Saturday came along and we had to do the ACFT. Now, mind you, I just did 24 miles in a span of 2 days. I did battle march and shoot, which was low crawling. I did the 4 mile, which was all this stuff attached to my body. So I am exhausted. So the ACFT consists of like 6 different events. It was a ball throw, push-ups, sprint, drag, carry, 2 mile run, deadlift, and all that stuff, right? So I said, all right, I'm just going to score the bare minimum on everything and I'm just going to graduate. So every single event I did good on, right? And then I get to the sprint, drag, carry. So we sprint one way, we sprint the other way, no problem. The drag part, you got to carry like a 40-pound sled or a 60-pound sled or whatever. We got to drag that from one end to the other end. So I'm doing that, right? We're going backwards with the sled because we have to go backwards. We're shuffling. My leg doesn't feel good. I'm like, what is going on, dude? My leg gave out. And it just like not a pop, but it's just like my leg like flatlined. And I fell on my butt, right? And I'm like, damn it, dude, I got to make up this time loss, right? So I'm going. I get to the drag, I'm dragging, finally complete the drag. I'm doing the carry where I'm carrying the dumbbells, right? And I'm carrying them. And again, my leg gave out and I fall flat on my face, right? So we get to the end of the sprint, drag, carry. And I think I failed it by like, I want to say like 5 seconds, not even. So if I wouldn't have fallen, I would have got it, right? So I was depressed because I knew what that meant. I knew that meant I didn't graduate, and I knew that meant that I wasn't going anywhere. But we had like 2 events left. It was the plank and it was the 2 mile run. And my friend also didn't pass because he failed the sprint, drag, carry. So he's all depressed. He's like, I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be here, blah, blah, blah. And I told him, I said, look, man, we got this far. I'm like, what's another couple weeks? You know what I mean? I was like, just don't be upset. You know, whatever happens, happens. Cool. And I finished off the events. I did the plank. I maxed out the plank, and then I did the 2 mile run, and I did the 2 mile run, and I got that done in the time I needed to. And that was my second. I want to say it's my second ACFT that I did. The first one I passed, but they didn't count that one because it wasn't the finale, right? So it was me, him, and like 3 other guys or 4 other guys that didn't pass the ACFT, and they were messing with us. They were like, "Well, looks like you're not going to your duty station." So that was like a kick in the balls again because I'm like, again, everyone's gonna graduate, and I'm not gonna graduate, and I'm gonna be on the sideline setting up for the graduation, right? So instead of not graduating us, they told us, they were like, "Look, we got some people that gotta make this up, some people that missed it. They're like, what we're gonna do for you guys is we're gonna give you another chance to pass it, right?" So I went in that thing the next day. It was like we get 1 day rest and then we go in. I went there fully refreshed. I'm not hurting from all these events that I was doing. I'm not like I was on that first ACFT. I went into that thing blazing, guns blazing, right? I get to the sprint track carry. I'm like, I know this is the only event that I did not pass. So I said, I'm going to just destroy it, right? So I did the sprint. I'm running, I'm fighting for my life. I did the drag. I'm dragging that sled like my life depends on it. And you could just hear my friend in the background, "Go, Rivera, go." I did the carry. I'm carrying. I'm tired, I'm exhausted. And then the sprint back. And I asked him, I said, "Did I pass?" And he's like, "Yeah, you passed." He's like, "You had like 10 seconds left, but you passed." I was like, "Yeah." So now all I had to do was do the 2 mile run and pass the 2 mile run, right? So I'm running like my life depends on it. And I'm getting to my like last lap. And like my second to last lap, they told me, they were like, "Okay, you're at 14 minutes. And if you got to like 22 minutes, you failed." So already in my head I knew I passed it. So I'm running. And all I could think of during that run was like everything I've been through, everything I'm going through, finally being able to graduate, finally being able to say I'm a soldier, finally making it past basic training and getting past AIT. So when I crossed that finish line, I was ecstatic, man. I was happy. It had been such a rough time, and there were so many times I wanted to quit. And there was a time where I actually did quit. Um, it was like one of the last field exercises, and they had us working on the tanks and working with the tanks and shooting off the tanks, and it was cool, right? But then it started to rain. So this rain, it's torrential downpour, it's thunder, it's like everything. And I was pissed off because they had us sleep on the bleachers, right? You had an option of on the bleachers or under the bleachers. Mind you, it's winter time, it's cold, it's bad weather, it's in like October. So it was freezing. I was freezing cold. We're sleeping under the bleachers, sleeping on top of the bleachers. We got rain going everywhere. I had rain on my sleeping bag, rain in my socks, rain in my shoes, like rain everywhere. I can't even describe it. So we wake up the next morning and they were like, "Okay, trainees," they're like, "You got 5 minutes to get to your bags, shave, and then go all the way here and line up in formation." So I said, "There's no way I'm getting to my bag and shaving and then getting to formation on time." So I chose formation because I'd rather be a guy with a beard that's in formation than a guy without a beard who's not even with his formation. So we get to the formation and they're like, "Oh, so some of you didn't want to shave. So we're going to do some corrective action." And one of the corrective actions was, it's called the V up. You sit on your butt and you lift your legs up to your chest, and it's like an ab exercise. So he had us do that. The only issue is he had us do that in a puddle of water. So all that water got into my pants, all that water got past my underwear, and I was freezing cold, man. I'm like 140 pounds, 135 pounds wet, freezing cold, right? So I told my sergeant, I walked to the side after the exercise was done. I said, "I'm not doing this anymore." He's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done." So he pulls me to the side. He's like, "Look, man," he's like, "this is basic training. This is AIT." He's like, "It's not going to be like this in the real army. We're just trying to mentally prepare you guys to do X, Y, and Z." So it was one of those moments where I was very angry in the moment. But then as he kept talking about it, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm calm. I'm calming down. And I told him, I'm like, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna relax. And he told me, he's like, I haven't had a problem with you the entire time you're here. I haven't had to write you any bad negative counselings or anything like that. So he's like, just keep your head up, keep moving forward, do what you gotta do. And I did. Right? So the day of graduation comes, and we're sitting there in formation, and one of my drill sergeants walks up to me and he looks at me and goes, "You motherfucker, you made it." He said, "Good job," and just walks away. And it was one of those moments where I was like, yes, I did make it. And I'm glad that he took the time to appreciate the fact that I made it, because, man, being able to walk out onto that stage and in front of my family, in front of my friends, and like even in front of my nephew, who was a couple months old at the time, that made it to that graduation, I was like, man, that is something I will never forget, because I did that. It wasn't anyone else helping me but me. So that was Army basic training in a nutshell. There were a lot of nights where we all wanted to rip each other's heads off. There were so many nights where I wanted to rip everyone's heads off. But at the end of the day, I made it. And if anyone asks me, they're like, yo, how is basic training? How is Army basic training? Did you do this? Did you do that? It's all here. It's all in this story. It's all in this podcast. You get to hear it from point A to point B. Sure, there's a lot of things missing, but nothing crazy important. Just a lot of arguments, a lot of fights, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of drama, unnecessary drama. It got to the point in basic training where I literally just sat by my locker, minded my own business, and just either slept or was writing the family, writing the friends, staying away from people who are going to get me in trouble. So it was rough, right? And a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of nights where I doubted myself, a lot of nights where I just didn't want to be alive. And I'll be real with you. Everyone's like, oh, you know, it's always the happiest people that are suicidal. I'm like, no, I've been honest about my mental health for the longest time. And I'm like, there were times where I just wanted to die. I didn't want to be there. I still got the writings in my journal that's like, "Dear Mom, I am not going to make it. If you are seeing this letter, I did not make it." But looking back on it now, I'm like, man, I made it. It is what it is. And, I got to my unit, and there were more struggles with that, but that's for another time. I just wanted to cover that portion of everything, because for me, basic training was rough. It was tough, but I got through it. And mentally, I feel like it did make me stronger. It did make me realize that there were a lot of people who are weak-minded at first, but then they develop that sense of, hey, I did this, now I can do this. And it's cool, man. It's cool watching people develop and people grow and people, become something more than they are. And now I'm sitting here in my empty room at 12:17 in the morning, just thinking about life, thinking about everything that happened. So I just wanted to get on here and share my experience, and hopefully you could relate. And maybe, you never know, like someone might be doing their first day of basic training, or they might be going into boot camp, and they'll read this and they'll see this and they'll be like, oh, so he went through all these struggles and he made it out, and now I can make it out. But the Army's no joke, man. Like people laugh about it all the time. People joke about it all the time. Army's no joke. Especially like mental health and people's mental well-being and people's like just mindset in general. Like for me, like I got here in my unit, and within like the first week I realized it was high school all over again. People are clicked up. People are judging you based on your first couple of words that you say. People don't want to talk to you because, oh, I don't know you, so I don't want to be your friend, right? Literally in my unit, I was like an outcast for the first couple of weeks because no one knew me. No one got the chance to know me. No one wanted to talk to me. And everyone was just clicked up already. So they had their own people, and that's the people they stuck with. And I said to myself, I'm like, I'm never going to be like that. I was never like that when I was out doing my thing bartending. I was never out like that when I was doing my housekeeping. I'm like, if I saw someone who felt like they were on the outs, I would bring them in. I'd be like, hey, you're new? Oh, cool. Come hang out with us. I'm never going to be that guy that's like, oh, yeah, you're new. I'm staying away from you. Ooh, cooties. Like, that's just wrong, dude. And I don't take offense to it because people react in different ways and people do different things. But like that stuff hurt for a little bit, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like for the first couple of weeks, I was like, I'm a social pariah. Everyone hates me. They don't want to be around me. What is wrong with me? And like that mental side of you where you're thinking like that, you're like, man, like you think you're like, am I good enough? You know? And then there was one person who welcomed me in who was just like, hey, my name's so and so. What's your name? If you need help with anything, I'm here to help you out. And I think, like, in the army and in life in general, you need more people like that. People that are going to welcome you in, people that are going to introduce themselves to you, and people who are going to build you up when you're down or, like, help you out when you don't feel your best. That's the type of people we need in the army and in life. But yeah, I'm getting sidetracked. I think next podcast we'll talk about mental health and we'll talk about stuff like that because again, like I said, one of the biggest losses in the army, it's not in the field, it's in your head. And I've come to learn that like people don't know how to deal with their mental illness and people don't know that other people are going through the same stuff. Like me personally, I'm like, I know that when I get sad, I get really, really sad. So I'm like, I could only imagine how other people get. But I'm going to cut it off there, because we've been talking for a good hour. And, we'll see where this goes. Like I said with my other podcast, when I was doing my podcast, I'm like, it could be one episode, it could be 6, it could be 7. It just depends on the mood and what I want to do and if I want to wake up and actually get this done and actually do this. So we'll see what happens. I want to talk about, possibly producing colognes. I want to talk about mental health. I want to get other people on here to talk about what they want to talk about. So we're just going to take it a day at a time and go from there. But as far as I'm concerned, I hope you enjoyed the podcast if you made it this far. And if you didn't, I understand. It's kind of hard. I hope that everyone's doing great, and I hope that everyone has a good week and a good weekend, because the weekend's coming up. Be safe, don't drink and drive. One of the most important things they say to us is that nothing good happens past 12, so don't stay up past 12, which I've broken that rule multiple times, but it's all good. But yeah, enjoy the weekend. Go be safe. This is Jordan, signing off.